Howdy, howdy, everybody. My name is Toast, and I love the Winx Club. I have adored them since I was a little kid. It was one of my favorite shows watching as a kid. I rewatched it recently with one of my best friends. We watched the first season, and then we watched the first season again because we watched the bad dub first, and then we were like, oh, I forgot. There's like an actual good dub of this show. If you haven't watched the bad dub, watch it. It's so funny. Bloom is so dumb. But for the life of me, after watching just the first season alone, was just like, I love this show. I want to do something with these girls. I want to draw them. I want to do fan art, but I don't do fan art anymore. It's not something that interests me, right? And so like thinking about doing fan art of them, I'm like, I don't even know what I would do here. Like, do I just draw some cool illustrations of them, which I could have done, but when I was thinking about doing illustrations of them, I don't really do a lot of illustrative work. I have been getting more into it recently, and you'll see some of that in some of my future videos, but for the most part, it's not really what I do. I'm a comic kind of person, so I was like, what if I just, rewrote the entire first season and made a comic, and that's not feasible and not a good idea at all. I shouldn't do that, even though I kind of want to, but I shouldn't do that. But I have recently, and by recently I mean like within the past year, or a little over a year at this point, I think, really gotten into Dungeons and Dragons. I had sort of been into it before, like I had heard about it, I always wanted to play, but I didn't have like a group of people to play with or anything like that. And I had like gotten super heavily into Critical Role, Chef's Kiss, Mighty Nine, my loves, and then a little bit after that, we decided to start playing a game. And after playing in that game for a little bit, I actually started my own game that I DM, so I'm in 2 campaigns right now. That's probably going to be even more soon, so that's fun. But I love D&D, and getting into it made me realize, like, oh, I love creating art for this. The amount of art that I have created for D&D is insane. I have so much art for it. It's one of the things in my life that I think I've created the most art for. The campaigns that I'm in, the characters, I love it. I love designing characters for it. I love creating characters. It's my favorite thing. And so when I was thinking about what I could do for, the Winx Club girlies, I was like, oh my god, I'm a genius. I should draw them as if they were in Dungeons and Dragons. Duh. That would be literally so smart of me. Like, what? So, that is what we're doing today. We're going to be drawing these girls as if they were in, I'm drawing them as if they were in my homebrew D&D world, because D&D spans, like any setting that you can think of, but my setting is your typical, like, sort of high fantasy vibes with a bit of steampunk mixed in, We have to have at least some semblance of technology for Techna. Poor girl. So, everyone is still a fairy, like race-wise. I wanted to keep that, but each of them has their own individual class, and I'll go over that once we get to that point. But yeah, I think that's enough of me rambling on. I apologize. This is like my first time doing this. So why don't we just hop directly into the speed paint portion of this video. And we'll be doing 4 of the members today, and we'll be doing 3 in the next part of this video. So, alright, let's get on with it. Alright, first up, obviously, we're doing Bloom first. She is like the main of main girls within our group, our party here. So for Bloom, I decided to make her a celestial warlock. The reason that I ended up deciding to make her a warlock is a little dependent on the other girls, because for most of the girls, I had a very easy time figuring out what I wanted to do for their class. The only 2 that I struggled with were Stella and Bloom. And the reason that I struggled with them is because I both sort of saw them as sorcerers, and I wanted each individual girl to have their own class. I didn't want anyone to overlap. And so I had to decide, okay, which one's going to be the sorcerer out of these 2, and to me, Stella felt more like the sorcerer. Spoiler alert, she's not even a sorcerer, but this is why I ended up making Bloom a warlock. And I'm pretty happy with my decision of making Bloom a warlock, and you'll see as we get into the actual designing part where we do her outfit, you'll see why. But at the current moment, I'm just working on posing. I couldn't decide if I wanted to go with a more basic pose or a more dynamic pose. I end up going with the more basic pose of the 2, because as much as the dynamic one is nice, I think the basic one shows off her outfit better. And that was my main goal here. I wasn't trying to make, a dynamic illustrative piece. I was just trying to do character designs, and you want the pose that's going to show off the most for character design. Now, getting into her actual outfit design here, I decided that her whole thing is that she is, like, the fairy of the dragon flame, right? and so making her a celestial warlock allows me to be like, she is a warlock of the dragon flame. And so in her design, I really wanted to pull in the dragon elements, because I think that's one of the things in her fairy form that's missing the most. And so I decided to give her scale mail. She has this like chest piece here, as well as her pauldrons, and you'll see her tassets later, have this sort of dragon wing design to them. And you can see I'm giving her scale mail like gauntlet, I don't really know what to call them, but the forearms and sleeves, and she's getting gloves as well. And for the sleeves on her upper arm, I decided to give her this sort of two-tiered like puffy top, because obviously Bloom is not only a warlock of the dragon flame, she is also the princess of Domino. And I know that I actually looked at her like formal wear for some of her stuff, she was actually in more Regency era stuff, like imagine Bridgerton, but I didn't like that for her, and I thought, you know, Bloom, although, you know, obviously she's not actually from Earth, I decided to go with Italian inspiration instead, since this is an Italian TV show. So I took inspiration from Italian princess dresses that I saw. Do I know if they're 100% historically accurate? Absolutely not. Did I go with them anyway? Yes. So I gave her these puffy sleeves that I saw. A lot of them were 3-tiered. I just went with 2 for clarity here. You see that I made her tassets also have the dragon wing design, which the tassets are the hip armor there. I gave her this sort of corseted piece, again, to mimic her being a princess. I gave her this longer scale mail piece. I thought about making it a mini skirt at first, but I wanted to bring the scale mail further down her outfit, so I brought that all the way down, and then just gave her some pretty chill armored boots and knee plates that matched the rest of the armor design. In for her hair here, gave her bangs like normal, and then I decided to, for her actual, like the long bits of her hair in the back, I saw this one artist who made Bloom's hair look like it was on fire, and so that's what I decided to do for Bloom, was to make the little in bits of her hair look like they were on fire. And then the top portion here of her head, behind her bangs, there's a braid crown, and a little bit later after we get to the coloring phase, you'll see that I add one of those like old looking historical hair nets. I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but I added that onto her as well. When it came to their faces and stuff, I wasn't super concerned with getting their likenesses down. Like, do I imagine this is what Bloom actually looks like? I don't know. I didn't really think too hard about it. I just kind of gave them faces and moved on, because that was the least of my concerns here. I was more concerned with their cool outfits. You'll see once we get to her wing portions, I also decide to make her wings look like dragon wings, because that's one of my favorite things that I see in character designs of Bloom when people redraw her, is giving her like dragon wings. I think that's so cool. It nods to her dragon flame aspect, which I really like. And then we're going in here coloring with her blue and yellow color scheme, obviously giving her fiery red hair. It took me a minute to figure out what colors I wanted to go with. I couldn't decide what colors I wanted to make the armor itself, but I ended up adding in a darker blue and also a like cream white color into it all. So she kind of looks like a specialist. I'm not gonna lie. I accidentally made her look a little bit like a specialist, which was not my intention, but I'm okay with it. I think it's fine. Her and Sky can match, you know? Even though I don't ship her with Sky, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay, Bloom belongs with Ribbon. Crazy, crazy concept, I know. Just going in, doing a little bit of cleanup here, and the design here, I think, looks fine. It looks, like, decent. But I think once we get into the details, that's when the design really starts to take place, because after I go in with the coloring and stuff, I'm going to go back in, and I think we're starting it now. You'll see that I am adding this like gold beading to her outfits, and I imagine it's a mixture of gold beading, embroidery, there's like regular like pearl beads in there as well, to really give her like that, like, because in olden times, like, people were a lot more into, I would say, the quality of a piece and like adding in details and stuff. That's something I love in fashion, in furniture, in anything. And so I wanted to really bring that in here with her design. Here I'm adding in that hairnet piece. You can see I added little gold beads onto her actual sleeves and everything. I'm adding in an ombre to her hair to make it look like it's actually on fire. That is, I think, for the most part, Bloom's design, you know, just finishing up with a few minor rendering details. This is just a sketch. I didn't go crazy with these designs because I would have been here forever. But just adding in some final details, and that is my Bloom design done. This is Bloom, Celestial Warlock of the Dragon Flame. Please let me know what you think about her, if you think I did her well, if you think this matches her character, or if you think I, like, royally screwed it up, you know? But be nice about it. I'm like sensitive at heart, so okay. So next up we have the best girl, Stella. I love Stella. She is by far my favorite character within the group. I adore her with my whole heart. And for Stella, I decided to make her a cleric. And the reason that I decided to make her a cleric, instead of making her a sorcerer, which was my original intention, I made her a cleric because she is the fairy of the sun and the moon. Obvious, this woman is going to have the radiant spells. And, I don't know if you know this, but clerics have the most radiant spells in the game. The only problem that I see with the cleric is the fact that most clerics are support-based. And I love Stella. I don't think she's a support. This girl gives me, like, DPS vibes. So it just, like, lined up perfectly. It's like it was made to be. The subclass that I thought about for her was the light domain cleric. First of all, light domain, perfect. I mean, that's literally her. Second of all, light domain is an attack-heavy cleric class. It's less support, more DPS. So I think that works out really, really well for her. Now, outfit-wise for her, is it the most, like, reasonable, like, you're not gonna get killed in this outfit? No. It's not the most protective thing on the planet, but it works. There was this one beautiful dress that I saw that had these, like, beautiful poofy sleeves with, like, this halter top underneath. I don't know. It was, like, really beautiful. And so I decided to take that as inspiration, so I gave her these, like, poofy sleeves, almost sort of a, what's it, princess cut? Is that the neckline style? I don't know. And then, obviously, there's the halter top underneath, and I changed this, like, way later, the halter top underneath to cover up all of that region, because I just didn't think Stella was the kind of girl to have her biddies out. I don't know. Underneath here, I gave her a, like, armor piece for her torso. Should there be one for her heart, too? Maybe. Who knows? I also gave her these, sort of armored, not gauntlets, because they don't cover the hands. But, you know, I gave her armor. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, don't, yeah, I know what a tacet is called, but I don't know what any other piece of the armor is called, so don't come after me, okay? Then I decided to play around with the idea of giving her a skirt, because, you know, she's fashionable, and I didn't like it. I was like, there's no movement here, you know? Maybe if I gave her, like, a bigger, poofier skirt, but Stella, to me, isn't a poofy skirt girl. I don't know, she's like a skin-tight, you know, dress kind of gal. But obviously, that's not great for combat. I thought was nice because it actually matches her fairy form in Winx Club, because she does wear shorts. And I decided to make them poofy to match with the upper sleeves here, and you'll see in the coloring, they're the same color. And then for her, like, legs, I just gave her some simple armor to cover her knees and her shins and her feet. They're probably healed, because I like heels on my armor, and you can fight me, okay? They have wings anyway, so they're probably flying around most of the time. I also gave her a spiked headband to sort of mimic hers, but I wanted to give her spikes on my version to mimic sun rays, which is a little funny because it does end up being colored silver later, but that's besides the point. I then also gave her 2 twin tail braids because I really like her original hair where she has her cute little low pigtails, but I just decided to put them in braids because it would be a little bit easier probably to deal with in combat. And then working on her face, obviously I kept her bangs the exact same, and I decided to give her these really long pointy ears. And, you know, I gave each of them pointy ears for fun. Then working on her staff here, I knew that I wanted to include this in the drawing, but I wanted to, like, redesign it slightly because Stella is the fairy of the sun and the moon. And there's just not enough moon in her design, right? So I decided to give her staff this sort of, it didn't connect all the way around to sort of mimic a crescent moon. So it'd be like a crescent moon on the outside with a sun in the middle with sun rays coming out. And then here we are hopping into coloring with her skin color. I think for most of the girls, I kept a lot of their colors similar. For Stella, I did change her hair color, because that yellow was too bright for me. It was actually killing me. And then I decided to keep her armor the same color as, like, her bracers on her regular Winx Club form, which I really like her color scheme. It was like this orange and then this, like, bluey silvery color. I think that's really nice. Leans into her being, you know, sun and moon. And then I decided to pull in the green from her regular everyday outfit, because tell me why they made her pink in the new reboot. Okay, that hurts my soul. Okay, her colors are orange and green. Orange and green, not pink. Okay, there's too many pink characters in this group already. Aisha, Flora, Musa, and Bloom, and Roxy all wear pink. Get it out of here, okay? She doesn't need to wear pink too. Sorry. Now, I decided to go in, add some sort of embroidery detailing onto the bottoms of her clothing, as well as going in and adding some detailing to her armor, giving it little sun pieces, adding some like engraved filigree onto the shin pieces, and then I also added in some trim along the edges just to make it, you know, a little more interesting, a little more fancy, since she is supposed to be, she's like, Stella's like the fancy one of the group that wears fancy clothing and stuff like that. And then I decided for her like actual, the orange pieces of her clothing, to give her these like little gold beads that were probably sewed on, because I don't know, that reads as fancy and rich person-y to me. And then, I mean, that's pretty much it for like her overall design. The only thing we have left to talk about are her wings. And for her wings, alright, the third person that we are doing today in this video is going to be the best girl, Flora. Now, Stella might be my favorite character, but Flora is undeniably the best girl of the group. Flora, obviously I made her a druid. That was obvious. What else was I gonna make her? I also decided for Flora to make her a little bit thicker than the other girls, because I wanted to make the girls differing in body size at least a little bit. You know, I wasn't gonna go like crazy with it, but I wanted them to be a little bit different. And so for Bloom and Stella, I ended up keeping their body sizes pretty similar, I would say, just in my style, compared to their original. And then for Flora, I made her a little bit thicker, and you'll see we do Musa in this video as well, and I made her very petite, and you'll see that later. Now, for Flora, I decided to give her these downward pointed ears, because I thought that would be really cute. And for her outfit here, I decided to... Obviously, there's going to be, like, some Flora inspiration in here with plants and stuff, and since Flora is supposed to be Latina, I did decide to take some inspiration from some, like, traditional Hispanic outfits, like the pretty, like, dresses that are, like, off the shoulder and have, like, the three-tiered skirts. So you see that in here with this, like, off-the-shoulder frilly top that goes over this, like, sort of leaf sort of corset thing that I imagine is probably made out of leather that just is dyed green. And then I do this three-tiered skirt that is sort of based off of this one specific dress that I saw that was really beautiful, that was like a leaf at the bottom, and then the little frills at the bottom of it were like petals that were coming out. So I did that. I gave her some straps and like a choker that were made out of roots or vines. I thought that was really nice. Obviously doing her bangs, I think her bangs are too iconic to change them, so I kept those. For her actual hair, I did decide to go with a style that I saw. Really pretty. It has like part of the hair, it's very curly and it's like draped off the side of the shoulder. It's got like a bun in the back, and I also decided to give her like ribbons through her hair, because that was something I saw a lot when I was looking at some more like traditional Hispanic clothing and hairstyles and stuff. Now for the coloring, again, like with all the girls, we would take the regular old skin color they gave us and hair color and all that. The like two-tone bangs she's got going on, giving her some makeup, giving her green eyes, which end up changing to a different green later to match her fit. And then going into the coloring here, I couldn't decide on whether or not I wanted the top to be a lighter green or a darker green. I ended up going with the darker green, just because I thought that looked a little bit nicer. It looked a little bit more leathery to me, I guess. And that's what I imagine this is. I mentioned it's dyed leather. And I kept the skirt part here green as well, and you'll see I changed it to a lighter green fairly soon. And that does end up changing later, and you'll see why. But here, I imagined it was like... You see here, I'm trying it with pink, and I didn't like that. Trying it with white, didn't like that. No, I'm going to the lighter green. And you'll see I changed that later to just be pink entirely, so that it looks more like the entire bottom of the dress is flower petals coming from the top, going through and adding in some extra details to the sort of petal detailing at the bottom to make it look more like petals and less like fuzz, because that's kind of what it was looking like at this moment. For Flora, I feel like I didn't go as detailed with her as I did with Bloom. I feel like Bloom was pretty heavily detailed, and I feel like Stella was also pretty heavily detailed in terms of like, maybe not like the outfit shape, but in like the filigree and the beading and everything. And I feel like for Flora, I didn't do as much of that for her. Hers was, in my opinion, more simple. Here I'm trying out adding some like little leaf ribbons to the bottom of these flowers, and you'll see a lot of this ends up changing in a minute, where I just decide, you know what, I'm gonna give her some tassets, which tassets, I mentioned them earlier, but that's like the side armor that goes over your hips that like flaps when you move. Here I'm giving her a little leather pouch, probably where she keeps herbs and stuff. Give her a few potions. Here, I decided to add in another level of like petals that were white to give even more separation. And here's where I'm adding those leather tassets into to make them look extra like leaves. And this is the reason that I end up changing her skirt to be pink in the end, is because I think that the tassets really help separate the dress and make it look more like a flower blooming from the bottom. Also, I decided to give her iconic hoops because she's a hoop girly. Here, I'm adding in some like embroidery. Is what I imagined it would be along the edges of the dress and along the white frills at the top, as well as giving her buckles and stuff on her leather satchel, giving her some more flower details in her hair. I decided to give her some flowers like up at the top of her hair next to her bun, as well as a few leaves popping through, because I thought that would be really cute. Here I'm adding a little gradient, which I really like the way the gradient looks, and you'll see I fixed the gradient for the pink here, and I think that makes it look a lot more like petals. And then for her wings, I decided to make her wings look like leaves, because I feel like her original wings already look a lot like leaves, but I just made them look more explicitly like leaves, and I decided to give her a 3-tiered wing design, because I thought that would look really nice for her. And that's pretty much it for Flora. Alright, last up is Musa. Oh, Musa. Now, you may be wondering why there is a fully drawn head on your screen that has accessories and is colored, and why I'm starting on the outfit and not the pose. And the answer to that is that I actually did Musa already. And she turned out so horrifically bad. Like, I showed her to my friends and they were like, "Oh, are we sure about that?" And I agree with them. I was not sure about that. It was really awful, and so I decided to redo the whole thing. Incorporating the original ideas that I had from that, but just making it better and not ugly. And I'll put a picture up of what that looked like, because it was just really bad. You can see here now how bad it was. I tried to take inspiration from, obviously, Musa's a bard. Probably should have said that first. I think that's pretty obvious. There's no need for me to mention that. Musa's obviously a bard, and Musa is also supposed to be based off of Chinese culture and stuff, so I tried to incorporate that. You know, she's like into dancing and into hip-hop, and so I was like, how do I get big pants? And I was like, oh, the Chinese lion dancers, they dance, they got big pants, that's hip-hop, you know. And then it just was ugly. And then I was like, you know, I tried to maybe do like the chainmail as sort of maybe like a mesh vibe, and it looked bad. It was ugly, and so I redid it. And as you can see here, even just so far, it's a million kajillion times better. Kept the big bardy poofy sleeves because I liked that, but I just gave her, you know, a more simplified version of the sort of quote-unquote lion dancer's pants, I would say. I think they look nicer. Struggled with her shoes a lot. Her shoes, like, I don't even know what I was thinking for half of this stuff. I don't know. Don't ask me what I was thinking with that first design, because I was going through it, apparently. I just gave her some Mary Janes here. You'll also see that I give her so many bells. Later, you'll see the amount of bells that I gave her. Moving on to coloring, you know, in the original one, I made her pants black, and I don't think that was a good idea, because to me, they still kind of just look jeans, and like, I know jeans have been around for a really, really long time, but to me, they're modern. They're not historical, you know? Which is sort of the D&D vibe we're going with. I decided to tone down on the purple, because she has one purple armband. One. So, decided to tone down on that, and just go more in the red and the pink route for her. I did like some of the things I did with the pants, but I just made them a little nicer. Here, this was one of the biggest problems I was struggling with, was what color to make the underneath of, like, do I give her, like, black stockings, whatever? I couldn't decide, so you know, it's black, and that's what I keep it as, but, you know, it could have been a bunch of different things, I think. Going in, adding in, like, the extra, here, adding in the bells, you know, adding in some little beading to her sleeves, as well as adding in the clasps to her top here, giving her, like, a little musical note pin with, like, a little tassel hanging off of it, giving her the bows and everything. And here, I decided to add in one of those, I'm not sure what they're called, but it was, like, the traditional, like, Chinese looking, like, knots and stuff that they have. I thought that was really pretty. You know, I imagine that she on the battlefield is big into, like, dancing, you know? She's breaking it down, you know what I'm saying? And she jingles everywhere, like the fairy that she is. And one of the things that I did like in the original design was giving her these, like, flowers on her outfit. I thought that was really pretty. It was a design that I saw a lot in in the inspiration I was looking at for Chinese like outfits and stuff like that. So I brought that in. I thought that looked nice. And so I just think that this version of her looks a million times better than the old one. Sorry I didn't go like as in depth with this one, I feel like, as I did with the other ones, but I just, Musa gave me a time. For her wings, I was big on making them pink, but I think the blue looks nice and it pops off, you know? So here she is, you know? With that, that brings us to the end of the first part of this video with these girls done. Aside from the whole disaster with Musa, I think everything turned out pretty well. And if you like these designs, it would be really lovely if you could like tell me in the comments. That would like really boost my ego or something. That'd be nice. Or don't, you know, I'm not gonna like force you to or anything. Um, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That would be very helpful to my channel. And if you are interested in seeing the part 2 of this video, it should be up on the channel already. And it has Tekna, Aisha, and also Roxy in it, which is why this video got split into 2 parts in the first place, is because I decided to include Roxy in this party lineup. So, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!